A lone figure of a woman, face stricken with desperation, approached the disciples. She'd come to see Jesus, her clothes immediately betraying her nationality. She was not a respectable Jewish daughter, not of the stock of Abraham, but a Syrophoenician, a Greek, a non-Jew, a Gentile. The faces of the disciples as she drew nearer revealed their thoughts. She was not welcome. Yet desperate to have that evil spirit which had been holding her daughter captive for years, pushed her forward, dispelled her fears. She pressed forward. Despite them guarding the young prophet Jesus like a fortified wall, their faces hard, their arms closed, she pressed on. Undaunted, she pressed on. With expectations of a warm reception? No, she had none. She had no expectations of arms stretched out or warm faces to cheer her or an eager willingness to usher in to Jesus. She knew she was alone, so she pressed on. Somehow, none of this mattered. It didn't matter that they didn't want her there, or that their reception was less than warm, as she was no stranger to stares or glares, no stranger to being ostracized, particularly as her daughter's condition worsened. It is certain that she'd heard that Jesus was a healer. Else, why would she have sought him out? Fame of him had noised abroad. Perhaps she'd heard about the incident of the woman who was bleeding to death, but by merely touching his clothing, she'd been healed. Or perhaps she'd heard about the man who lived in the cemetery, who possessed demons, and Jesus cast them out. Perhaps she'd heard about that. We can't be sure what she heard, but one thing is certain: she heard something. Something so powerful, she threw caution to the wind in order to speak to Jesus. She heard something that moved her, empowered her, and engaged her in a quest to reach the Messiah. Romans chapter 10 and 17 declares that faith comes by hearing. Clearly, this woman's faith had been engendered by something she'd heard. And that faith was moving her and compelling her towards Jesus. She had a desire, and that desire mingled with faith was an ingredient for certain success. Particularly as the Bible declares that God works on the good desires of our hearts. In other words, he works, or his works requires our faith. If you don't have a good desire, you limit God's capacity to work for you. God is not about withholding, but rather unfolding and giving and enabling. Here's a kingdom principle. You move towards God and he'll move towards you. You're making a mistake if you're waiting for God to act first. No, God acts on your actions. If you notice in the parable of the prodigal son, he had to get up and return to his father. And as he moved back towards his father, the Bible says, ran out to meet him. This is precisely what this woman did. She drew near to God. She moved towards him and unknowingly compelled God to draw near to her. Listen, there are no stipulations to this principle. Anybody can access this principle. It's not about race or creed or color or culture. No, God's promises are sure if you only believe. In fact, the moment you are willing to get up from where you are, to shake yourself from the dust, God is ready to maximize your efforts. The Syrophoenician woman came to herself, a place where the penny dropped, where she realized that she didn't have to accept less, that she had a part to play in her destiny and that of her daughter. This woman came to herself, a point or a place where it didn't matter. It just didn't matter where she came from, what she'd done, who she was. Her past, no. She came to herself. It didn't matter that she didn't belong, or that she didn't fit in, or that she wasn't accepted. It just didn't matter. She was going to make herself and her daughter's request matter, and matter to Jesus. No longer was she going to struggle or fight against or be shut up or be silenced by this issue that had kept her silent and had kept her daughter prisoner for so long. Oh, you've got to know that sometimes, in order to get a solution to your problem, you've got to get to a nothing else matters place. Something miraculous happens when you really get there. When Samson got there, he brought down the stadium on his enemies and killed more in his death than he did in his life. When Brother Job got there, he sat back, blocked his ears to his wife and his friends, and waited for his change to come. And guess what? It came. When Moses got there, he found a way across the Red Sea. And when Noah got there, he built an ark for rain no one had ever heard of. When Esther got there, she put her life on the line and went in before the king. When Ruth got there, she joined herself to a broken, childless woman in her mother-in-law with the words, "Entreat me not to leave thee." Oh, there's a power in your nothing else matters place. You'll suddenly find the ability to achieve things you never considered possible. Why? Because God gets up behind someone who gets to that nothing else matters place. Just like he got up behind David when he threw that stone from a slingshot and killed a giant. When this woman heard that Jesus was in the area, it acted like a match, igniting a flame of faith in her heart, sending her in search of him. Such was the faith. It wrenched her from her daughter's bedside in a last-ditch attempt to save her daughter's life. She was on a premature mission. Clearly, this mission was labeled impossible. But you know that God specializes in the impossible. She didn't know exactly where Jesus was. The Bible says he was hiding out in a house. But divine help was on her side. Help which acted like a compass and a personal guide. Perhaps she had given up all hope of her daughter ever being well again before she heard that Jesus was in town. God has a way of showing up just when we need him to. It was no coincidence that Jesus had gone to the coast of her town. No coincidence at all. He was making himself available to her. Listen, God will make things simple for us in order to save us.